Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Susan Lindner, your host of Innovation Storytellers, and today's going to be a very interesting day. I love having authors on the show because they get to provide insights that perhaps some of us don't get to make in the course of our day-to-day lives. And also, it brings to the forefront the imperative around why innovation is so critical in our respective industries today. And it's why I'm thrilled to have with me today Itai Green, who is the founder and CEO of Innovate Israel. He is one of the dominant leaders of Israel's corporate open innovation space. Itai is recognized as a leading player in Israel's startup ecosystem and is at the forefront of launching its growth at a very rapid pace. Itai leads innovation processes by connecting global corporations with Israeli startups to create advanced technological solutions focusing on IT, consumer products, pharma, finance, travel, e-commerce, retail, banking, insurance, energy, construction, tech, and IoT. And he is, of course, the author of Innovation or Elimination, a new book that's coming out in May of 2026. So, Itai, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Susan.
So this is a space I just adore, open innovation, but nobody majored in open innovation in college. I don't think this major will ever exist, frankly. So talk to us a little bit about how you got here, Itai. How did you step into the wonderful world of innovation?
So actually, I've had after over 20 years of experience of working with corporations and startups and governments across different markets. Actually, I kept seeing the same pattern. Organizations that rely only on internal capabilities, only on their internal R&D. They all moved very, very slow, too slow for our time, for sure. And, I was telling to myself, you have to change it. I mean, somehow, and with the open innovation, actually, this is kind of a medicine to this issue of being too slow and becoming irrelevant. So after many years as a startupist and few years in the corporate side, I wanted really to create a real impact. And the real impact, according to my view, is really this open innovation, which is actually creating the bridge between the traditional corporate and the startups and all the other third parties players that are outside the big corporates. And I think that we see these days that there is a true shift from closed innovation to open innovation. And the real challenge is the mindset. And in order to fight this challenge, the open innovation is really something that I find like a true value, something that really bring value to the corporates. And by the way, not only to the corporates, but also to the startups, to the entrepreneurs, to the academy. So I love it. I really love it. And I love, it's not theoretical. I mean, it's not like a theater for innovation. This is something I can't handle. I mean, I'm really hands-on. I'm looking for the practical innovation, practical execution to make things happen. It's not like a regular consultant that its outcome is presentations, slides, whatever. No, we can make it. We can bring this change. We can bring an impact. We can make corporates not die. And
let's talk about that for a moment, because I think Good to Great showed us, that amazing book by Jim Collins showed us that companies that have been on the Fortune 500 list for 100 years get knocked off because they fail to innovate, they fail to move with the times, right? This is a very sincere problem for so many companies. If they fail to harness the power of innovation, they will die.
We used to say that innovation, 10 years back, innovation was nice to have, innovation is important. Now innovation is like a must in order to survive, even not in order to succeed. At least to survive, you have to innovate and you have to change the mindset, the corporate mindset, especially the C-level executives, the board members, to make them be more open, to truly understand that they have to change. They have to break the doors, the windows, the walls, to get engaged with all the great talents around them. And I mean, and they have to be more modest. One of the things for C-level executives to truly realize is that most of the smartest people are always working for someone else, not for him, not for her. It's they work the talents. Most of the smartest people, most of the talents are not working for these people, for these C-level executives. They're working for startups, for academy, for competitors, for other companies. So once you realize that, the only way to work with the best is to open your mind, to change the mindset, the DNA of your company, and start collaborating, start cooperating, partnering with those smart people. And in many cases, these smart people, these talents are with startups. So, and this is something that requires a true DNA change. It's not easy, but it's possible.
So talk to us a little bit about some examples, Itai, where we can see this open innovation in action that you've been a part of as well. Where have you seen these big changes between large companies and the startups that they've worked with that have really helped to transform the business?
So I think that within all traditional corporations, in any vertical, it could be finance, it could be health, it could be agriculture, that once you educate the leaders, once you expose them to what innovation is, what open innovation is, why is it important? What happens if you don't do that? How to make it in a valuable way? Really educate them. And when I'm saying educating, it's like top down, because innovation is top down, is from the board via the C-level and mid-level management. The real thing to make is to educate, because they don't know. They just don't know. Don't be angry. Don't be upset. Just educate. They're smart people. Make them know. And once they know, everything moves faster and in the right way. Of course, all those silos between departments is an issue. Internal politics is an issue. Not in NIH. NIH syndrome is a true issue. I mean, this is
what is NIH syndrome?
NIH is not invented here. The type of leaders, type of executives, they are motivated by their ego. And this is a real risk, a real threat for the future. And you see that all around. You have to fight. And there are ways to fight that. When I'm pitching, and also in my book, I always say, get rid of those with the NIH syndrome. These people risk your future. Fire them. For sure, definitely don't hire them. And hire only those with the fear of missing out, the FOMO. These people are truly the one that will make your company relevant. And of course, you see also in many companies that the C-level, the CEO is promoting innovation only once you show the ROI. ROI within the first couple of years of innovation is not the way to measure success. It's if you measure the success of innovation at the first couple of years with ROI, you actually ruin the innovation. You block it. The way to do it is to run as many pilots as possible. And again, you see that all around. Another issue is the short-term KPIs. Short-term KPIs. This is a real problem. C-level are getting bonuses according to short-term results. They have no motivation to innovate. So you see that all around, really all around.
Yeah. So is there, companies that you've worked with, Itai, that could give us some real examples of how this has really changed a company from the inside for good?
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm not gonna give you the name, but I can definitely tell you that in the last 8 years in a row, I work close with a company in the insurance space. And this company is actually, once they started to run the innovation, once they started the open innovation methodology, no startup really had an interest to work with them. But they were irrelevant in the open innovation, in the innovation ecosystem. But once they've decided, and again, top down, once the CEO and chairman have decided that this is their way to keep being relevant, they've started to do it right. And when I'm saying starting to do it right, running innovation, most importantly, is to start with the education. And they've started to run innovation bootcamps across the company with all departments. And with each and every department, what they've been doing is they were collecting the challenges, prioritizing them, scouting for the right solutions, meeting with the right startups, with the right solutions, deciding with which of those startups they want to proceed into a pilot. And thanks to the fact that they've engaged, truly engaged their employees and truly educated them for the importance and made them feel like they're a part of really important thing, they ended up with over 60% success rate of pilots. This number is by far more the common number that people are aware of. I mean, with most corporates, the average success rate of pilots is 10%, 20%. Here it's over 60%. And this is the way.
Why do you think that is? What do you think made the difference?
I think the reason is the engagement of the CEO, the board, the C-level, and the willingness to really invest the time and attention into bringing everyone to the understanding that it is important, providing everyone with the tools, how to handle relationship with startups. It is so important. The cultural gap between a startup and a corporate is like huge difference. And I usually tell my clients, you want to work with a startup, don't expect the startup to speak your lingo, the corporate lingo. It would never happen. You would like to collaborate with startups, speak the startup lingo. This requires a DNA change. It is not trivial. It's not by nature. In many cases, the majority of corporate people have never spent a second working in a startup. They're not familiar with the difference.
Yeah.
They never worked as a startupist. They've never been on the other side of the table. And once they truly understand that while they have to work with startups, but if they want to work with a startup, and they have to change their habits. They have to adapt. They have to treat the startup with respect, being open for their ideas, work fast. It is so important to work fast, to remove barriers, to remove bureaucracy. Startups cannot handle bureaucracy. So you want to work, you have to work with startups. Start speaking their lingo. So important.
Well, you know, it's interesting too. I mean, I remember a friend of mine who was the head of a startup accelerator in France for a decade. He started it. He helped hundreds of startups go through their doors and become successful, and many of them failed as well, as startups do. He left the accelerator after 10 years of helping hundreds of startups achieve some modicum of success, and then went to work as the head of innovation for a huge retail chain in France. He said the shift between working with startups and working with grown-ups was dramatic. He said his job as the head of innovation was to introduce a startup into the company, to hit send on an email that had 20 people CC'd on that email. And then he would wait at his desk for 6 weeks while 10 people or 20 people on the emails would debate whether or not they should take this idea of the startup and work together with the startup. And he would wait for 6 weeks until all the conversation was done. And then someone would give the thumbs up or the thumbs down to the startup idea. And he said, my job as the head of innovation for a big retail company was chief waiting officer, not chief innovation officer. And so how do you manage that? Because it's one thing to understand the fast moving startup culture, but it's another thing to also understand the slow moving, deliberative, got to get alignment, got to get cooperation, got to get buy-in business of the large corporation too.
That's actually, I hear this frustration from many innovation leaders.
Yeah.
And I think the real mistake is that they see themselves and as the one that introduced a startup to the corporate. Their job, I mean, one of their jobs as innovation leaders is to engage the corporate people, to make the corporate people love to work with startups, that they truly understand that they have to. And if you are not preparing the ground in the corporate, that's why I mentioned the education. If you do not do that in advance, before you introduce startups, then you end up with frustration.
Yeah.
And actually, I see a good innovation leader needs to be the one who is the best project manager in the company, because at the end of the day, running pilots between startups and the corporate is a project. Each pilot is a project. And the one who leads that, the innovation leader, has to be the best project manager, because a good project manager knows how to make things happen, how to make things happen fast, and how to make people love to work for your project. So this person needs to be the best project manager, but also the one with the best people skill, because you have to engage the people. They need to work with you. They need to they need to want to work with you. You don't push them. They need to come up with their challenges to the innovation leader to solve their pain. So this is the way to position the innovation leader. And with those innovation leaders that I work with, I can tell you that the good ones, even if their direct executive is managing 700 employees, and out of the 700 employees, there is only one innovation leader. I've seen cases where the VP, the C-level executive, his attention is dedicated to the one out of 700 for 90% of his time, because he truly understands, or she truly understands, that this one, the innovation leader, in many cases is more important than the other 699 employees, because this one is the one that will bring the change. This one is the one that will keep the corporate relevant. And with many cases, with many corporates, there is a mistake. People think that the most powerful executive is the one who manages as many employees as possible. The one who is the most powerful guy or lady in the company is the one who manages hundreds, thousands of employees. In our time, the most powerful executive is the one who manages as many projects with startups as possible. This is the one. In many corporates, it's a one person. But if this one innovation leader is managing 10 projects with startups, the impact of this one is much higher than the others that are managing hundreds of employees. In our time, you need to manage projects, pilots, integrations, investments with startups. This is really bringing tremendous value to the corporate. So I think we should look at the things a little bit different than we used to.
So how does a corporation figure out whether or not they need to bring in a startup to solve a problem, or whether or not they should solve it on their own?
That's a great question. And what I usually tell my clients is let the best win. You have a challenge, it's a pain, it's something that bothers you. You have to solve it. It's significant. Let the R&D tell you how much time and resources it's going to take. At the same time, go outside of the company, scout for relevant solutions, learn what's out there. And in 90% of the cases, the corporate realize that it is by far better to run open innovation, to run external partnership with a startup rather than to develop internally. And even if they choose to develop internally, which again, in 90% of the cases, it's a waste of money. And more important, it's a waste of time. Because money you might have, time you can't buy. And these days, the main challenge is the time to market. You cannot buy time. Your clients are expecting solutions today. They're not going to wait 3 years. So I usually tell my clients, even if you choose to develop internally, at the end of the project, please, few learns and lessons are important. Mm-hmm. Try to learn whether it was the right decision to make, because again, in most cases, you don't need to invent the wheel. It's already out there. These days, the technologies are available. I mean, if we had this discussion 20 years back, the old discussion was completely different. The main challenge was to develop the technology. These days, the technologies are out there. You know what is the challenge? To engage the people. The organization change. This is the issue. This is the challenge. The solutions are out there. You just need to engage, to implement.
But there's like a strategic, so once you have an organization that says, okay, we're open and willing to work with startups, right? And we've educated the organization that we're going to start doing this. There's the real issue of 80% of startups never really make it to like full fruition, right? Or they become good corporate customers. What are some places where, you know, doing open innovation or working with startups can have not always the best outcomes for companies as well? What have you learned in this process, Itai, where it doesn't work?
So I tell you the truth. After over 10 years of actively running open innovation activity, I learned that if you do it right, you end up with success.
That's most things in life.
So you have to learn how to do it right. Because in many cases, people are telling me, 90% of the startups are dying. Okay, so why not learning how to select the 10%?
Okay, so give us some tips. What's the best way to think about how to choose the right startups?
Okay, so I want to ask you, if you're a psychologist and you met 1,000 people, you agree with me that once you meet the next one, you would be able to analyze him or her like in a second? I mean, this is something you learn. You learn once you meet entrepreneurs, and I meet every year like around 1,000 entrepreneurs. And I do it for the last over 20 years. You can guess that once I meet entrepreneurs, in the first few minutes, I know whether they would be able to deliver or not. So I think there is a room for experience here, that once you know the ecosystem, once in few WhatsApps to ecosystem players, you can check the background of the entrepreneurs. So the team is very, very important. The one that you are as a corporate, the one that you are about to engage, if there are serial entrepreneurs, you reduce the risk. If they are people with good reputation, you reduce the risk. If investors, like good ones, have invested in this team, you reduce the risk. And this way, I think we are able to truly end up with high rate of success. And I want to tell you something. With most cases, let's say on average, a pilot takes 3 months. So even if the 3 months end up with nothing, let's say you're disappointed, it can happen. I mean, it's a part of the game. But with most of the pilots, it ends up with a success, then you're fine. Then you're fine. And I want to tell you a secret. The corporate capability to analyze a startup is by far better than any professional investor, any venture capital. Once a corporate has a challenge and they found a startup they believe that is about to solve this pain, that it's the right thing for the challenge, and they run a pilot for 3 months, when it ends up as a success and they are about to integrate this new technology and become a client of the startup, this is the golden moment also to invest in the startup.
So let's talk about that. Do you think large companies should become venture capitalists, or do you see them more as strategic investors?
So I think the right thing to begin with is to look for startups to solve concrete, important challenges. This is the way I see that in order to begin with. This is important because at the beginning, your goal is to run as many pilots as possible across the company, commercial departments, business departments, but also the headquarters. I mean, the HR, the finance, the procurement, everyone across the company needs to run pilots with startups. It changes the DNA of the company. It updates the operating system of the company working with startups. And then what I truly believe is that after a couple of years, once the innovation machine really works well, the next step is also to have a stake, to have equity within those startups that you've been running a successful pilot with. Because if this startup solves your pain, it solves the same pain to thousands of companies around the world. They all suffer the same. They all face the same challenges. So if this startup solves your pain, it solves their pain. And once you've been lucky to really fine-tune the company product, the startup offering, you can make a lot of money from this investment. So it's on parallel. It's commercial engagement, but later on also an investment. I highly recommend doing it.
So what if this young startup says, we've really enjoyed the pilot, working with Siemens, with GE, with, a defense contractor, right? But we really want to sell our product to all of their competitors too. Does a startup ever get into a problem where they want to work with multiple companies? They don't want to just have one big customer and have their life dependent on that big customer.
You're absolutely right. And in this case, the corporate that is engaging with the startup needs to allow the startup to work freely with anyone, with any corporate, including competitors. You can't really make a startup to work solely for you. And exclusivity is irrelevant these days. We are in a time of everything is open, everything is collaborative. The challenge for the corporate is to work fast. The one who wins is the one who engages with the startup in the fastest way, the one who integrates the technology the fastest way. This is the one that will truly enjoy the benefits of the startup. So this corporate is going to be the first one to enjoy, but there is no exclusivity in this relationship. Otherwise, you kill the startup. You want the startup to work only for you? okay, in this case, not only invest 10% equity, not only getting 10%, I mean, buy the company, M&A, full M&A, but that's another story. But if you're not in a position to buy the company, only small investment, that's fine. Let them work, let them enjoy. I mean, the best cases are the ones that the corporate that was the first one to work with the startup, help them to fine tune the product, make it with a great market fit, and then let them work. And naturally, once this startup is going to have the next generation of the product or the software, the first one to enjoy that is the first one who believed in this startup, the first corporate. So
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the way to handle it. You can't really hug them too tight or too strong till you kill them. That's not the way to handle it.
Yeah. And so that last piece, that there's the investment opportunity, there's the acquisition opportunity, and then there's the fly, be free. Let the startup do what startups are going to do. And, I think the other side is the open innovation that takes place for the startup. The more exposure they get to potential customers, the better opportunity they have to improve their product, not to just fine tune it for one customer.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So do you define open innovation as just the ability to work with startups, or are there other ways that companies pursue open innovation?
So I think that the most valuable and most impactful way to enjoy the ecosystem or the open innovation methodology is with startups, with entrepreneurs. Having said that, it is important to also engage with the academy. With the academy, it's very important to
Meaning
engage with.
academic institutions like
Yeah,
universities and
it's very researchers, and this is very important. And also with working with other companies, I think. But in most cases, the best innovation is coming these days, according to my experience, from those entrepreneurs. And I think that the goal of a good or great innovation leader is to make the entrepreneurs, once they are still in the garage developing the initial prototype, knock on the corporate door, or the innovation leader at the corporate, knock or on this leader door before they even have online presence. These days, everything is moving very fast. The pace of change is something it's hard to really imagine. I mean, it's hard even for me that I really live these all innovation, and I shouldn't be surprised. I'm surprised, to tell you the truth. Every morning I find something new, and things are moving very fast. And I think that the main challenge for a real good innovation leader in the corporate is not to be surprised. You shouldn't be surprised. That's that. Really, at the end of the day, this is your job. This is your job as an innovation leader, not to be surprised. Your corporate can't handle it. So you need to know what surrounds you. In order to know what surrounds you, you need to know the entrepreneurs and the startups and the VCs and all the ecosystem players, including other companies and academy at universities, etc. And in many cases, the CEO, in order to know what's going to happen in the future, they hire strategic consulting companies like, McKinsey, BCG, etc. In order to help the company know not to be surprised. In order to help the corporate not to be surprised. Yeah. And I want to tell you something. A good innovation leader is not surprised. And the reason is because those entrepreneurs in the garage stage, early stage, these entrepreneurs should knock on your door as a leader, as an innovation leader, before they have online presence. They want to ask your advice as a corporate professional. Corporate has a lot of knowledge. Entrepreneurs are looking for this knowledge, for this experience. So the greatest innovation leaders are approached first by entrepreneurs when they are still in the early stage, when they are still in the garage. And this stage is a stage where McKinsey and the like are not familiar with them because they have no online presence. They are below the radar. And this is the way I measure a great innovation leader. Those that these entrepreneurs knock on their door and tell them, hey, I want to ask your advice. And this is the way not to be surprised. By the way, it is by far cheaper than any strategic consulting company like BCG or all of these. So they are smart people, all these strategic companies. But in this area of innovation, the one to trust, the one to rely on is your innovation leader in the corporate.
I think you've given us a good dose of advocacy for startups plus corporates equals the best sandwich ever. That is a tasty return on investment. So I'm going to ask you now, Itai, the question that I ask everyone who comes on the show. What do you think is the greatest innovation of all time?
I think OpenAI is definitely one of them. I mean, this is something we see the impact. Even if at the end of the day, Gemini is going to be stronger than OpenAI or whatever, yet the one that really exposed us to this new world, and we are living in a time like that it's a true revolution. It impacts us all around in our personal life, in our professional life, a true impact. I think this is absolutely one that is with a huge impact. But every few years we have something new. And we had the telephone of Graham Bell at the time. We had electricity. We had the first mobile phone, first smartphone. Every kind of innovation was the greatest for that time. But things are moving very fast. So maybe a year from now or a couple of years from now, we are going to face something else completely different. But the goal is to not to be surprised and always know what's coming next. And this is something you can achieve with innovation.
Okay, so I'll ask you next. If you had the chance to join any innovation team in human history, which team would you have joined?
I wish I could be at the CEO room or the chairman room of all those companies that have been disrupted, like Blockbuster, like Kodak, like Nokia. I mean, the traditional corporates that were truly leading their domain. And I wish I could have been there telling their CEO what I tell my clients. We are not the smartest. We should be modest. Open the door. Open the windows. Start collaborating with those that might surprise you. These are going to be your strategic partners. Maybe. Give it a chance. And I think that with the right methodology, their future could be absolutely different. So I truly wish I could be the one to help them open their mind, make their door the first one a startup would knock on, take risk, willing to take risk. It's so important. Engage the leaders. And most important, being modest. It is not easy by nature, naturally. It's not easy to convince a CEO of Google 3 years back, or the CEO of Nokia, or the CEO of Agfa, to convince them at the time when they were succeeding, to convince them, be modest, to convince them to open the doors, to convince them to truly realize they don't know everything. And I think these days, thanks to the GPT and the OpenAI, the agentic revolution, I think it is easier than ever to convince the CEOs of those successful giants that they have to listen and be more open because otherwise they might end up like Nokia.
And lastly, what do you think is the innovation that the world needs now?
If I would know, I would be probably very, very rich. I think, there are so many areas we want to live longer. This is an area which is fascinating me. All this area of wellness, the area of health, how to improve our health, but I think also other areas. I mean, if there was one that would be able to bring peace to our world, I think it could be great. So if there is an entrepreneur that knows how to bring peace and make people collaborate rather than to compete or fight, I think it could be a great, great innovation.
Wonderful. Itai Green, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So either via LinkedIn or just WhatsApp me. My number is all around, so they can message me. I'm like an entrepreneur. I'm available 24/7, or almost nearly 24/7. This is from my days as an entrepreneur, 15 years as an entrepreneur. You are available.
That's right. And don't forget to check out Itai Green's book, Innovation or Elimination. It's going to be out and available in May 2026. Itai, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Susan, for this opportunity. It was really great. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure.